So our exploration of actors and Shakespeare continues, and I'm joined by Stanley Wells and Paul Prescott, and they've been working on Judi Dench and Rory Kinnear. Stanley, it seems like an obvious question, but why Judi Dench?
I think it's a variety of things. She has wonderful technical resources in the sense of wonderful timing. Her comic timing is immaculate. She has great transformative power. You recognise this also, of course, if you see her in films of non-Shakespearean roles. She can play anything from a slut to a goddess, and she plays both in Cleopatra, one might almost say. She remains a beautiful woman. She, of course, has got old now. She's got much older. But even in her most recent Shakespearean role in a play, The Countess in All's Well, there is a great beauty in her presence, I think, even if it's not a youthful beauty. She also is a wonderful speaker of Shakespearean verse, and this is one of the things that I most admire about her. And she's worked very hard at that. I've read a lot of reviews of her performances, of course, and reading the reviews over the years, you see that she acknowledged herself that she had a lot to learn early on. She was Juliet. I didn't see her Juliet, but she was Juliet for Franco Zeffirelli long ago, before she even came to Stratford. And she acknowledges then that she didn't have the full verse-speaking technique, nor did Zeffirelli call upon it, because he cut the verse to ribbons in that production. It was a great production, but it was not great for its speaking. But I've analysed her speaking once I actually listened to a recording of her speaking, and I made notes, which I reproduce in my essay about her, about the pauses, about the upward inflections at the end of lines, for example, about the emphases. She's also very good at bringing out the antitheses within Shakespeare's verse. Such an important thing. A thing that John Barton, who's directed her very fruitfully, is very insistent on whenever he's talking to actors about speaking Shakespeare. The antitheses is important to bring out those in order to get the full richness and the full sense. It's a curious voice that she has, of course. It's not the beautiful Ellen Terry, John Gielgud sort of voice. It's a slightly odd voice, a bit of a crack in it, but you can use that to wonderful effect, to emotional effect. And she can be a very emotional actress, but it all comes out of this wonderful technical control, which I felt very strongly in her Cleopatra. She is also terribly versatile. I mean, my memory of that is partly enhanced by my memory of going to see her play Mrs. Pooter in a play based on the Diary of a Nobody. Delightful little play, and she played a very farcical role in that with her husband, Michael Williams. And I went to see her after the performance, and she was just beginning to learn the part of Cleopatra. And she rather nervously produced a copy of the play for me and said, "Can you tell me what this line means?" She was already thinking ahead from this farcical part to one of the greatest of all parts in the whole of classical drama.
Now, how far is it intuition and how far is it studied, the verse speaking, the voice? Is that an impossible question?
It's not easy. There is intuition. She's not an intellectualizing actress. She hasn't written much about acting. She doesn't make public proclamations about her acting. She acknowledges great influence from a number of mentors, from Peter Hall onwards. Peter Hall, Richard Eyre, Trevor Nunn have all directed her and had an influence, and more recently Greg Doran, who writes very well indeed about her performance as the Countess. I quote part of that in my essay too. But she is nevertheless a deep study. I've been with her sometimes when it's been very clear that underneath the surface, even of a quite superficial conversation, there's been observation going on. She observes people. She observes the way they speak as well as the way they move, the way they behave, the way they express emotion. So I think there's a lot of implicit study without necessarily, I don't think she studies in the sense of, say, reading a biography of Cleopatra before she plays Cleopatra, as some actors would do. But she understands the depths of the play and discusses them with the director especially.
And how did you go about writing about what she actually does in order to make Shakespeare live on stage? What were the challenges for you with that?
Well, The challenges, of course, are to convey in prose something which is intangible in behaviour, to try to create a sense of the sound that she makes. I do that partly by analysing the intonations that she gives to a particular passage. The passage of Viola that I take for that.
That's Act 2, Scene 4, isn't it, when she's talking to Orsino?
Yes.
A blank, my lord.
That's
she
right.
never told her
never
love.
Told her love, but sat like Patience on a monument, smiling at grief.
And the death of the brother, sort of Sebastian.
Yes, that's recalled.
Haunts that conversation for her, doesn't it?
And she does it partly by a slight withdrawal of the breath, and an inwardness is apparent in her face and in her voice. And that's something where she has a wonderful capacity to use expression without any sort of exaggeration or caricature,
yes,
which gives a sense of inwardness. She can convey the inwardness of her role.